Okay, here's Frankenstein Part 3. This is what happens after the creature is finished talking with Victor and up until the end of chapter 20. So, to begin with, the creature and Victor have just finished talking. We return now to Victor's point of view. So, we're on the other side of the bullseye now. The monster repeats his demand that Frankenstein needs to make him a female companion. Victor has been very moved by listening to the creature's story, but when it comes to the very end, the last part, where he admits to having killed William and Justine, that changes Frankenstein's mind. And he says, I do refuse it. I do refuse to do this, such a thing. The two creatures together, he considers, the two creatures together would be capable of much more wickedness than one alone has been. And so he doesn't feel like it's right to create another one. This is bad for the creature because he had said, you cannot in justice refuse this. But the creature doesn't lose his cool, not yet at least. And instead, he still continues trying to reason with him, trying to use reason with him, which is very different than we expect. He says, I am malicious because I am miserable. So why should the creature, he says, why should I love or respect mankind when mankind hates and attacks me without any cause? And then he says the quote that is on the front of the book, which is, if I cannot inspire love, then I will cause fear. And then he does threaten Frankenstein. Now here we get into more of the monster that we've been kind of expecting to have. He says, if you do not agree, that he will make it so that Victor will curse the very hour of his birth. Now those words are important because that is exactly what the creature has been doing. The creature has been cursing the moment of his creation throughout his point of view. So he's saying that he's going to do to Frankenstein the same thing that has been done to him. But he says, if I wasn't alone, I would be content, and therefore I would be harmless. I wouldn't be causing problems and mistakes because I would be content. Now, Frankenstein is not convinced here, but it's interesting to see that the use of logic and reasoning here is very different than in the rest of the book. This is a book from Romanticism, and Romanticism was very much more interested in emotion and especially in nature. And here, the monster is instead relying on reason. Now, oftentimes in Romanticism, to rely on reason is considered to be kind of a bad thing. But I don't know if it is here. Because does the monster's reasoning make sense? I mean, what do you think? This is kind of a bit of a personal opinion there. Is it true that evil deeds arise from unhappiness? People do evil things because they are unhappy. Many psychologists would say yes, that the reason anybody does something evil is because they are unhappy and they're trying to overcome that. Can we stop people from doing evil things by making them happy? If people are happy, will they stop doing evil things? Again, many people say yes. Many other people say no. That by making people happy when they've been doing evil things, all we do is encourage them to do more evil things. That's a matter of opinion, and as of right now, I'm not sure exactly what that is. But the creature does say that his request is reasonable and moderate. So the question is he right? I mean, does a father owe his children happiness? Does he owe them at least the chance of happiness? So here we have, this is the little thing here, this is the monster, the champion of reasoning. He uses logic and reasoning in this section to almost do the opposite of the focus on emotions and nature seen throughout the novel. Even Victor is able to take some pity on the monster's plight, and he agrees with his argument for a companion eventually. Think about what tactics and arguments the creature uses to convince Victor, and the creature spends much of these chapters beforehand trying to elicit sympathy from the readers. And does it work? I mean, I think it kind of works for me. But then, yes, have we forgotten what the monster did? At the end of it all, he did murder a child. So did it work? Does he still convince the readers to feel sympathy for him? He makes that promise that we will go, me and my bride, we will go to South America. He says, this request is peaceful and human. So don't be powerful and cruel by taking it away. I think this may be a reasonable request. But in any case, Frankenstein is still not quite sure if he can trust him. Oh, yes, and now this, coming to Adam and Eve, this again is recalling the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis or in Paradise Lost, which is what the creature is more familiar with. In the Bible, in Genesis, God says it is not good for man to be alone. That's Genesis chapter 2, verse 18. At that point, God makes a woman for Adam so that Adam will not be alone. So that whole idea that like I would be happy, I would be content at least if I wasn't alone, it has its origins in Christianity, in the scriptures. So does Frankenstein owe the creature the same thing? He, in a lot of ways, is God to this creature. So does he owe this creature a wife? It says, the picture I present to you is peaceful and human. You could deny it only in the wantonness of power and cruelty. So he's saying that what I'm asking is a simple, a peaceful, a human thing to want to not be alone. And he says the only way you could deny this is if you were just really mean and powerful and like just cruel to keep this from me. So at this point, and that should not have come up that way. There it goes. Okay. Now, at this point, the creature and Victor, they make a bargain. The creature swears that he will leave every place that mankind lives and that he will be harmless. Victor's still a little uncertain because he's saying, okay, what if the creature is still lonely and comes back to the human world? The creature has shown that it is not harmless. He's killed people. So how can Victor trust him? And besides, well, Victor just doesn't want to do it. He feels like it was bad enough to have to have done this one time, but now he's asking him to do the same thing again and make another, go back into that well. And frankly, Victor doesn't want to. And so he's trying to find a reason, see, is this the right thing to do, or can I justifiably say no? Eventually, he does agree to the monster's bargain. So he agrees. And the creature promises that he will watch Frankenstein's progress and he will appear when Victor is ready, and then he turns and runs away. Now, why does he run away so fast? Well, probably so Victor cannot change his mind. He knows Victor well enough at this point to see that he's fickle. And once he's made that promise, he's going to get out of there as quickly as possible before Victor can change his mind. Well, whatever, though, now Victor has a goal. And even though the idea of creating another creature horrifies him, he's got something that he can do. And the question is now, is this a mistake? Or is it the first decent thing that Victor has done? Because again, I believe that the sin of him was not in creating this creature, but in abandoning it. So is this him atoning for this sin by coming back and saying, okay, I abandoned it before, now I'm going to return and I'm going to try to make it happy again? I think you can make an argument either direction. I mean, Victor is certainly in a tough spot. He doesn't want to do this thing, but he also doesn't want to have failed this creature that he made, so he's not really sure exactly what to do. So I don't know if he has a right answer or not, but certainly he now has a goal anyway. So then we go on to chapter 18. So weeks pass while Victor tries to summon the courage to begin the work of making a new creature. He doesn't really want to, like I said. He thinks about going to England because there are some people in England who have done some research that could help him. He talks about going to speak to these philosophers and getting their opinions on stuff. But besides, he doesn't want to do this ugly work in Geneva where he's afraid his family might discover it. Now that's another difference between the book and the film. Because in the film, he does all of this stuff in close proximity to his family, and his family do come and discover it. I love to be able to have us get together near the end of the year or whatever and have you guys watch this film, because it's really great to see all the differences, and yet the film is what people are much more familiar with. Okay, the other issue going on in chapter 18 is with Elizabeth. So Victor's father notices that he's very unhappy. He doesn't know why, of course, and he has a guess what he thinks it is. He asks if he feels love for Elizabeth or if he only feels like sisterly affection. You know, I mean, they've always kind of assumed that him and Elizabeth are going to get married, but now Victor's been gone for all this time, and now he comes back, and his father starts wondering, okay, if you don't want to marry Elizabeth, then his father says he doesn't want him to feel any pressure to do so. If you think of her as more of a sister, don't feel like you have to marry her for our sake or whatever. Um, and so he's trying to relieve him of that burden. But Victor assures him, no, 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 I do love Elizabeth and I do want to marry her. So his father then suggests, well, then let's get married immediately. This will bring happiness into your lives. Now, it's kind of interesting because I'm doing the stuff on theater history with my other classes, and we just finished talking about Romeo and Juliet. And it's interesting. Juliet's father says much the same thing under the same circumstances. Juliet has just lost a cousin. The family is sad about Tybalt's death, and he says, well, let's cheer everybody up by having a wedding. Um, I don't know myself. If I was going to be getting married right in the wake of a bunch of people, somebody in my family dying, I think that might kind of poison the happiness with this sadness that's still hanging over things. Or I'd feel guilty about being happy when I have so much to be sad about. So I don't know if that would work for me, but whatever. Victor kind of feels the same way. He doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to get married while his promise to the creature is still unfulfilled. He feels like then that promise will tarnish his life with Elizabeth. So now he has a reason to get started because he figures when the deed is done, he will marry Elizabeth. He's holding out that as kind of the reward to once he finishes creating the creature's mate rather, that he will then marry Elizabeth, and that'll be his reward for being able to start a whole new life. So he asks his father for permission to go to England so he can get started on this. So, there it goes. Sorry, it's loading very slowly. There it is. Henry Clerval joins Frankenstein. He's come back from the university, and they know he's going to England. He wants to go to England for his own reasons, but mostly he's going to join Frankenstein, so Frankenstein doesn't have to be alone. And they begin their journey to England. Now, Victor is afraid in leaving Geneva because he's afraid he's leaving his family and his friends where the creature could come and hurt them. Notice now, he still does not believe that the creature is going to honor its promise. The creature has said that he won't do anything, that he's going to follow him and he's going to be there when he's ready. But he doesn't believe him. He's still afraid the creature might hurt people in his absence. So during the trip, Clerval expresses joy at the beauty of the land. There's actually quite a bit in chapter 18 talking about the beauty of the land. And Frankenstein comes out of the story for a moment and starts wondering where Clerval is now. He's like, remember, he's still telling this story to Walton way back at the top of the world in the Arctic Ocean. And so in this story of him telling, he comes out for a moment and wonders where Clerval is now. And he expresses this belief that the spirit of Henry Clerval must still exist somewhere, that such a good and noble man couldn't have just ceased to exist. Now, this is foreshadowing. Well, it does two things. First of all, it is Mary Shelley's statement about the eternal nature of the soul. That's important because the idea that the soul cannot die is one of those eternal questions that powers literature. Death is something we all live with. Much of this book is about death and the idea of life being created and where, if life has been created, then where does it go? Can it end? And this is Mary Shelley's statement about the eternal nature of the soul. She's suggesting, no, wherever Henry Clerval went after he dies, he's still around. Now, the second thing, of course, is it foreshadows that Clerval is going to die. And so keep that in mind. That's been foreshadowed now. Watch for what's going to happen to Clerval eventually. All right, so when we get to chapter 19, at this point, Victor and Henry have gone off to England, and most of this chapter is taken up with descriptions of nature. In Romanticism, the contemplation of nature is considered to be like the purest connection to the spiritual life. It's almost like this is what God is nature. So in this chapter, it contains many descriptions of natural sights which lift Clerval's spirit up, but these sights do fail to lift up Victor's. And I think it also shows how Victor is continuing to delay his work because they arrive in London in October and then they wander about the country for almost 9 months. I've often read books like this and I wondered, gee, I wish I was a rich, noble person of this time period that you just kind of go and spend several months just going around for no reason. And I wonder, okay, how are they paying for this? Who is making their meals? Where are they sleeping? And they just kind of take it for granted that they can just kind of go wherever. But whatever, and I think it does show that Victor is kind of wasting his time. Deliberately, he still doesn't want to get started. Okay, then Victor separates from Clerval in Scotland. They go up to Scotland. Victor separates from him. Clerval stays in one place, and then Victor goes way up north. He goes to one of the Orkney Islands. If you look at this picture, you can see the Orkney Islands are way at the northern tip of Scotland. So this is as remote a place as Frankenstein can possibly get to. Just way, way out there. He has neglected his promise for much too long, and he's afraid of what he calls the demon will do if he does not deliver. He's afraid, what if this creature, what if it hurts Elizabeth? What if it hurts his father? What if it hurts Clerval? He believes at this point that the monster must be following him, and that he believes that the creature will appear when the woman creature is complete. But he's still afraid, because what if I'm wrong? What if it's going to hurt Elizabeth, or it's going to hurt my dad because he's so far? What if it hurts Henry Clerval? If he is following me and hurts Clerval, as a way of just saying, hey, get to it, you're waiting too long. And then Victor makes this interesting statement. He says, I am a blasted tree. The bolt has entered my soul. Now, this is a callback to the tree that he saw destroyed by lightning as a child. Remember, I pointed that out to you guys. And I said, this is important. Why does this matter? And one is because it shows his interest in electricity, which was used, galvanism was used at that time period to try to reanimate things and get them moving a bit. And so that kind of foreshadows that. But he also looks now, he believes that he is like that tree. This bolt of this creature, creating this creature and stuff like that, that is like a lightning bolt that's entered into his soul and just destroyed him. So he's on the Orkney Islands and he works in solitude with no distractions, just by himself. But every day, the horror of what he's doing just grows and grows and grows. You guys have some idea about what that's like to be in solitude. And in solitude has a great ability to just kind of focus your attention. But at the same time, it makes it so that it's hard to push away the sadness and the pain. And you guys have seen a lot of that in what we're doing right now. Then we reach chapter 20, and this is another important chapter. Frankenstein, at this point, is almost finished with the creature's mate, when suddenly a few things just occur to him. First of all, he realized this new monster is just as likely to be evil and violent as her mate was. He's been thinking of this creature as being just kind of something he's creating on its own, as if it's kind of like a trophy for the trophy wife for the creature that already exists. But she has her own opinions too, her own thought. She'll be just as much of a human being as the monster was. In fact, she could be even worse. She might delight in violence for its own sake. There are people that do. And then he realizes that the creature has promised to leave human lands, but she has made no such promise. What if she refuses to honor the commitment that is made without her consent? What if she says, well, hey, this was your bargain to go to South America. I don't want to do that. And what if she refuses to do it? Here's another question. What if they hate each other? What if the creature reaches out to this girl that he's made and then she rejects him? Well, then the creature is going to be fierce and angry again. And so then all the promises he's made will go away because he's saying, well, I don't have the peace that I wanted. And now a worse thing, what if they did love each other? If you've got a man and a woman that love each other, one of the first things that might happen with that is that they might have children. And if they have children, that means there'll be a whole new race of these creatures. Now, I want to give you back a callback back to when he first created the creature, where he was saying an entire race will look at me as their source and creator. This was what he was originally trying to do, is create a race. But at this point, he looks at this as a terrible, terrible problem. And he asks himself, do I have any right to inflict this curse on future generations? That there'll be the whole race of these monsters. Does he have any right to inflict this curse on them just to buy his own peace? And there I'm referring back to chapter 4, where he says, before he created the monster, he was hoping that a new species would bless me as creator and source. Now he looks at it and says, future ages might curse me as their pest. So future race that would bless me as their source, or that future ages will curse me as their pest. And here's the problem. Those are both possibilities. But that's true of any worthwhile endeavor that you do. If it turns out well and you do great things to help everybody, people will be very, very grateful for it. If it turns out terrible and bad things happen, people will be angry about it. That's reality. That's life. So coming to chapter 20, we're still in chapter 20 rather, what do you think of this reasoning? Do you think he's right? Because there's always a chance that any action might turn bad instead of good. Does that mean that we should not try to do good because it might turn out evil? I mean, that leaves us with doing nothing. Or is Frankenstein right? Would it be selfishness for him to take the chance of doing a terrible thing? Is he better off doing nothing? Is it safer to do nothing if you're not sure if what you're doing is going to do right? Is it worth taking the chance that future ages might curse me if it opens up the possibility that people might bless my name? This is something each one of you need to decide. But if you're going to do anything that changes the world for the good, there's always a chance it's going to turn out badly. So that's something you need to deal with. Let's see. Oh, yes. So while Frankenstein is thinking these thoughts, he looks up, and guess what? Right at the window, he sees the monster watching him through the window and smiling. Big smile on his face. Now, in this picture here, it makes it look like he's like the Joker, kind of like, with a grim satisfaction, sort of thing. But why would the creature maybe be smiling? Well, it's possible that he's smiling because he knows that Victor's almost done with creating his wife. And he really, really wants to have companionship. In any case, the monster is watching him through the window, and he's smiling. And Frankenstein sees this, and he immediately destroys the woman he was making. And the monster screams in despair and rage and leaps away. A few hours later, the monster returns, comes into the house, and begins talking to him. And Frankenstein says, no, I break my promise. I will swear I'm never going to do this. And the creature is in despair, and he says, shall each man find a wife for his bosom, and each beast have his mate, and I be alone? Now, from the monster's point of view, this is a very good argument, because every other creature has a mate. Can you imagine being totally alone forever? I mean, it's hard enough to be alone through this COVID-19 thing, right? But to be totally alone, no friend, no wife, no family, just by yourself forever, how miserable would that be? But in any case, though, Victor does not have sympathy for him now. And he again just refuses. He says, I'm not going to do such a thing. I'm not going to open this box again. And the creature says, fine. But remember that I shall be with you on your wedding night. And then he leaves. Now, Victor interprets this as a threat to himself. He's saying that, like, the creature is saying that I'll see you on your wedding night and I'll kill you on your wedding night. For some reason, the idea that the creature would be destroying Elizabeth just as Victor has just destroyed his wife, that never occurs to him, which is a little weird because that seems much more poetically appropriate for him to destroy Victor's wife on the very night that she becomes Victor's wife. Why does that never occur to him? Is that selfishness in the sense that he only thinks of himself? He doesn't really think of Elizabeth's safety as being a thing? Is it just plain stupidity? Is he just so dumb that he doesn't see it? But whatever, he doesn't see it. He doesn't see that the creature is actually threatening Elizabeth. Okay, all right. Now, the next day, Victor receives a letter from Clerval, and Clerval's writing him a letter and saying, look, can you please come back to meet me at this place in Scotland where we separated, because I got to get back to London. I've got a trip that he's making to India that he wants to make sure he's on time for. And so I got to get back to London. I really want you back. And Victor decides that he's going to do that he's going to leave the Orkneys, go back with Clerval and all this sort of thing. But first, he needs to get rid of the remains of the body he was creating. He doesn't want any pieces of this found. And as he looked at it, he says, I almost felt as if I had mangled the living flesh of a human being. Now this suggests that deep inside, Frankenstein thinks of the destruction of the female creature as murder, as if he's created, the thing that he's created and killed it was actually murder. Now that is just what the monster thinks. He thinks of this, his wife, as being something that he already had counted on. And it being destroyed, he considers that to be murder. So Frankenstein gets into a little boat, and he carries the remains of the body in a little basket and goes onto a little boat. And he goes out away from everybody and then throws the basket into the sea. And then he sails away. Now he was up all night because he was creating the monster, and then he was destroying the monster, and then he was talking with the creature that he already did create. So he's been up all night, and so he grows tired, and he actually falls asleep in the bottom of the boat. Yeah, if you're real tired, you probably shouldn't go out at night in a boat in the middle of the sea north of Scotland. Not really very safe. So when he wakes up, he has no idea where he is. He doesn't know where he is other than that he's still in a boat. There's been wind and rain and doesn't know where he is. So he makes a sail out of part of his clothes and tries to find his way back to land. He eventually does find land, and he goes in there, finds land. He goes and pilots his boat back to so he's on land again. And the people he meets are very unfriendly to him. He can tell they speak English, and so he tries to talk to them and stuff like that. And he says, is it the custom of the people here to be so rude to people you've never met? And then the person responds, well, it is the custom of the Irish to hate villains. So that tells us two things. First of all, that we're in Ireland now, and that for some reason, these people believe that he's done something bad. Okay, so Victor has arrived in Ireland, and immediately he is arrested. Turns out there was a murder discovered just last night, and the people think that Victor must be the killer. Now that seems kind of odd, right? If you see somebody dead and then a random person shows up, they immediately think, oh, you must be the killer. That seems a little odd to me. It seems odd to Victor too. He says he's startled by this accusation, but he's not really worried because he says he is innocent. And that can be easily proved because he knows that people knew where he was in the Orkneys, and so he knows that he is innocent and he can prove it. And at this point, Victor says he needs to pause in his story because what he is about to relate is just so terrible that he needs to pause and rest his mind before he can come out and say it. Now that is a really great hook because what that does is it makes the reader want to keep on reading. You know, you come to an end of a chapter, and frequently, I mean, the reason why chapters are there is so that you can put a bookmark in it and say, I'll get to the rest of that later. But with a hook like that, it makes you feel like, okay, I don't want to stop reading now, and that's good writers will do that in order to keep their readers reading. And good teachers try to do something to make sure people are continuing to pay attention to them. So I've decided I'm going to throw this out to you this time. If you have been watching these and reading through Frankenstein and all that sort of thing, I want to be able to reward you in some way. I'd like you to send me a Jupiter message with these words in it. Say, I am not a zombie. You know, just like the creature in this is not a zombie because he wasn't dead and then brought back to life. He was never alive in the first place. So, if you send me the message, I am not a zombie, I will give you some kind of extra credit. I'm not sure how that's going to translate into grades or whatever, but at least that'll let me know how many of you are watching this. And I hope you guys are having a great day, and there's going to be more information coming out soon. See you later.